I would like to welcome you all to Zero Gravity webinar for marketing in uncertain time with Facebook. I have with me Siddharth Padmanabh. Hi, Siddharth. Thank you for joining us, and it's a pleasure to have you.
Hi, Kushbu. Thank you so much for having me. Really happy to be here today, speaking to your audience of followers. I think it's a good time to be speaking about what we're going to discuss today,
Yes.
and really happy to walk you guys through some insights we have and take questions from the audience.
Yeah. So, just brief that Zero Gravity is a full service new media agency. We've been a boutique, small full service agency working from Gujarat, and happy to be on board as a partner agency with Facebook. And like we know that COVID has brought a really interesting challenge in front of the whole world, and in an own way, large to small organizations are finding meaning and purpose and realigning themselves in this unusual situation, that how we can all find our foot on the ground and still survive, sustain and grow. So as an effort of that, we've been working on a lot of digital disruption ideas, and we've been working on how to help clients realign in a big way. The idea for doing this webinar is basically to share with this focus group that we have. Some of them are clients, some of them are friends, family, followers of Zero Gravity. Is that we get some insights? Can we share some insights from Facebook point of view? As a large platform, there are a lot of things that come under your radar, a lot of things that are in your purview to access. So how, as a giant in media, you guys are receiving the whole situation and what you are doing? So we are looking forward in this session to have more insights and more informations, and as much as knowledge that you can share with all of us.
Absolutely, happy to help. And I think first up, we must truly admit that these are extraordinary times that we live in. Why the whole world is going through something extremely unprecedented, and even in advertising and marketing, there is a lot of confusion. There's a lot of questions in the minds of marketers and in the minds of everyone in digital media in terms of what's going to happen next. How do we reach out to our consumers, and what exactly is it that we should be doing at a time like this? Even for you at your company, Khushbu, I'm sure there's a sea of changes going on. But I
Yeah.
think one of the things that you guys did really well off the bat is you were always ready for a remote infrastructure. So somewhere it has ensured that your efficiency doesn't dip at all. And I think those are the kind of lenses that all companies will have to start looking towards now, and ensuring that they're able to find their own strategy in navigating these times. So without much further ado, I'll jump into a few slides that we've put together for the audience today. And I just quickly want to confirm, Kushbu, if you can see my screen.
Yeah, we can see your screen. Yeah. So except for you and me, rest of the participants are on mute. They can drop their questions on the chat box, and our team will keep it and be asking them later on.
Sounds great. Sounds great. So quickly, in terms of what we're going to cover today, guys, one is how we as Facebook are responding as a company to our own employees, to the world, to community. From a more consumer perspective, what are the key categories that are impacted from a 6-month forward-looking pattern? Because I think that's the best cut we can take as of now. And what are the changes we can expect in spending? So we did a very comprehensive report along with Boston Consulting Group, and we did a study on the user sentiment in terms of how they plan to spend their money over the next 6 months, given the current sea of changes that we're all going through. And then a change in the media landscape, what your strategies could potentially pivot towards. And then most importantly, what you as a business can start doing at this point immediately, because of the pandemic that we all find ourselves. There are logistical restrictions, there's a lockdown in place, there is uncertainty in different parts of the country in terms of the extension of the lockdown. So with all of these uncertainties in place, how does a brand really react? So let's knock this off one by one. Really looking forward to your questions towards the end. So please do note them down, add them to the chat, and Khushbu's team can then compile them, and Khushbu and I can take them for you guys later.
Yeah.
So, firstly, how are we responding as a company? So, while we are aware that Facebook has an extremely large responsibility when it comes to the internet. Today, this morning, in fact, we hit 3 billion monthly users globally. That's close to, I would say, a little less than half of the world's population. And they were all on Facebook in the last 30 days. So, given the size of the influence the platform has and the number of people that depend on Facebook for either passing their time, for consuming content, for staying in touch with their friends and family, or generally just to stay close to people, Facebook holds a very large responsibility. So we've taken a large number of steps across these four pillars in terms of ensuring that we are putting our best foot forward when it comes to managing the crisis. And I think one of the most important levers of that, and all of you will agree, is making sure that everyone has the right kind of information when they need it and where they need it. Now, given the plethora of information on Facebook, I think Facebook's done a fantastic job by making sure that we have our Facebook Coronavirus Information Center up. Like every country, every government, every state has their own information portals. What Facebook is also doing is we know a lot of people depend on Facebook for information. So we're putting up our own information centers on our business pages. So you guys can always go there, keep a track of the latest updates when it comes to the virus, when it comes to the tackling by different countries. And also, what we're doing is we have a very large fact check network. We're all on WhatsApp as consumers, and we're all used to receiving so many forwards, right, from our friends and family. And more often than not, we come across forwards that may or may not be true. And it's extremely critical, especially at a time like this, to ensure that people are able to fact check what's being shared. First, we all personally hold the responsibility to ensure that we don't share anything that seems untrue, and usually it's the more scandalous or negative implication topics that get shared. So making sure that we're not doing that, and even if you come across a forward of that sort, make sure that you're running it through a fact check, because what we are doing at this point in time is we're putting a lot of resources behind the companies that do these fact checks, and we're working with news organizations as well in ensuring that the right kind of news comes out. Misinformation has always been one of the key priorities that Facebook wants to ensure that doesn't propel on the platform. So making sure that people are not able to post anything harmful or deceitful, or something that insults other individuals or organizations or companies at this point in time. It is a time when the world needs to be together, united, and show a real solidarity when it comes to being able to put their best foot forwards in terms of information. So we're doing our best even on the organic side and the media side. On the media side, we've taken some steps, like we've banned advertisements for hand sanitizers, we've banned advertisements for face masks, disinfectant wipes, COVID test kits. Now, you may argue that this is the need of the hour, so why would Facebook stop people from advertising for those? But I think what we've realized over time and what we're starting to see is that a lot of pop-up shops are coming into play where they're creating substandard masks or substandard sanitizers, just because it's the need of the hour, and they're using Facebook. They try to use Facebook to start advertising for these. So we've had to put a blanket ban on this, but as the situation's always evolving, our ad policies are always evolving as well. And with every month or every few weeks, our ad policies are being revised to ensure that we're able to correct the right kind of behavior on the platform. And just overall making sure that no one's exploiting the platform or being really opportunistic at this point in time. It's not really about brands wanting to make money off this pandemic. We want to ensure that no one's really being opportunistic, like I said. Another large piece here for Facebook is what we can do with say health organizations. So the World Health Organization and Facebook are working extremely closely at this point in time. Facebook provides them uh, unlimited ad credits for the duration of this pandemic until we find a global solution for this. So what Facebook's doing with WHO, and we're trying to help them run ads. We're helping them make sure their ad efficiencies are great. Ad coupons I already mentioned, but that's just one of the smaller things that Facebook is doing. It's an absolute responsibility that the company does have to work as closely as WHO, because they are actually the gold standard when it comes to the kind of information that the world needs to receive right now. And if you are following WHO's Instagram or Facebook page, you'll see the content they're trying to create is extremely relatable to all people everywhere. So that's an important aspect that we continue to focus on.
Raj,
And
Siddharth, sorry to interrupt, but there is a question even I had that
please,
that would interest is while Facebook does all this information dissemination, curation,
yeah.
non-exploitation, what is it at this level apart from the global organization with at the brand level that Facebook is doing? Are there any case studies or are there any pilot steps being taken on that?
When you say at a brand level, do you mean?
Government or more national brands like
Yeah,
Amul,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like
So I'll come to that. I'll come to that. So we're doing a lot. Even so, the way I'm going to receive that question is, what are we doing at a domestic level, at a brand level? How companies and advertisers in India can probably seek to receive some support from Facebook? Would that be an accurate way to receive that?
yes.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I think we're doing a fair bit. I'll walk you through, in fact, the next slide. So when it comes to local governments, communities, or businesses in India, what we're doing with every local government across the world is, first up, Facebook announced a grant of 100 million US dollars that's going to be spent across 30,000 small SMBs worldwide, of which about 1,000 companies in India, small companies, SMBs, are also going to benefit from this. We've already set up an SMB grants page in India. You can just Google SMB grants Facebook and you'll find links to that page. There's a newsletter there that gives you all information in terms of how you can access the grant, how you can, as a business, apply for that grant. And then we have very third parties who have been appointed to receive these applications, swift through them, and make sure that we're able to help the most affected and right companies through these grants that we have. And like I mentioned, out of the 30,000, 1,000 of these will be allocated to companies in India. We're working extremely closely with the local governments in India, the central government and the state governments. We've built the MyGov app literally overnight, which is a WhatsApp information center for anyone wanting to receive updates related to COVID, related to where they could probably find help around them. So if you guys want any accurate information in terms of what to do, how to diagnose, if you feel you have symptoms, or just make sure that your friends and family are all tuned into the MyGov app. It's powered by WhatsApp, and also what we're doing is we're looking at how we can empower NGOs and public health officials with Facebook Workplace, which is our technology that powers a lot of workplaces across the world. And it's the B2B solution that Facebook takes to market, but right now it's been made absolutely free of cost for all of these involved parties, like public health workers and government offices that are really round the clock. So the idea is to really improve their efficiency as well, making sure that they have ways to connect with each other. They are on top of everything. So this is what we're doing really across local governments and businesses as well. And more from a brand's perspective, if I were to answer that question, we're helping brands redo their narratives across industry verticals. So what we're speaking to brands about right now primarily is how they can approach communication at a time like this for their industry verticals, how they can think about their consumers at a time like this. A lot of brands that typically would only try to do direct response campaigns through a Facebook don't have the ability to do that now, because either logistically they cannot, or production is impacted. So for brands like them, we're really helping them build the narrative and communication in terms of how do you still stay top of mind for your customers when you are going to be able to deliver your products and services again. So a lot of industry-wise cuts coming up there, and again, as the situation evolves, you'll keep seeing more and more content across the internet that Facebook India is producing. So stay in touch with the Facebook business pages. That's your best source for information. And for those of you who do closely work with Zero Gravity and Kushbu, you guys will get a much better first-hand view of how brands can actually redo their entire jig and their entire content communication at this point in time. So before I actually start speaking to you guys about consumer sentiment, Kushbu, I wanted to actually just hear from you in terms of maybe in a line or two or a paragraph, if you could tell me what are the kind of sentiments, different kinds of voices you're hearing from the market, good,
So
bad, ugly.
the first and foremost, the sentiment that anyone has is, a fear of uncertainty.
Yeah.
The cloud glooming over, and the first thing that anyone clings on to is, how to get the grip of the business and how to get the grip of the, sustenance. So largest or the smallest of the units that we are working with have kind of responded in a very swift manner. That is also very surprising. That is where I believe that, basic Darwin's principle comes to the play, that, survival to the fittest game, and as humans we adapt and learn and relearn very fast. I have seen the one first jerk reaction is a cut down to a marketing budget, a cut down to agency, cut down to a partner, and which is an obvious thing that one thinks of when it comes to how to handle the situation better. Like just before the webinar, I was on a call with one of a client where we were talking about how it is difficult and how they need to channelize the money to get the operations running, not on marketing. But we ended up concluding the discussion saying that though it is not going to be primary, but it's going to be equally important to keep some budgets so that there is a new business, because in every business the demand shift has come. There's a
Yeah.
huge demand shift where who your customer was is no longer your customer, and the customer lies somewhere else. So you have to refocus, reshift, realign, and kind of get the grip on. So what we are trying to do is helping client to, like you said, that very interesting example is instant launch of an app, and through that you are helping on WhatsApp. So identifying a lot of WhatsApp solutions, a lot of instant Facebook driven behavior solutions, and how getting their consumer engaged in a more empathetic manner, more purposefully creating a content for them that they still don't lose a sight. And there is a fact that yes, there are consumers on social media. Everybody is on social media right now, and how do we not miss that part and still not come across too opportunistic about it? So these are the few outlines that we've been observing and working, and in that what we have learned is, what our attitude was yesterday is not today. The way we would look outlook is it's not about how many creatives or what campaign we run. It's about how can I help you get your business on feet again, and whatever as a team we need to do help there is what we kind of realign and focus on.
Understood. Yeah, and I think that's definitely the best approach you have, and you're already taking it for your brands. I'm really happy to hear that. Like you mentioned, right, when something goes wrong, it may not even be a pandemic at this scale. Even if quarterly earnings of a company are not in line with the expectations, typically it's the marketing budget that gets hit first. And however, having said that, I think any good marketer and even those on this call do actually realize that marketing is not a good to have anymore, especially when it comes to digital marketing. It's definitely more of a necessity. But when we're hit with a pandemic like this, I think if the brands do have the budgets and they still feel like they need to stay top of mind, they still feel like consumers have given them what they have till date and they've helped those brands grow, it's time to maybe give back to the consumers and just be there for them. And I think towards the end of the session today, we'll be covering that as well in terms of how brands can respond, what are the few pillars they can keep in mind. But before that, I just wanted to walk you guys through the BCG survey we did. So the idea here was we surveyed a lot of users on Facebook, and it's possible that maybe even some of you received that survey. where we ask them certain questions in terms of their spending plans for the next 6 months. So, simple questions like what kind of items do you see yourself purchasing over the next 6 months? Or would you be okay to pay more money? And if yes, how much for, say, an essential item over the next 6 months versus a non essential item? So we did this data and we extrapolated it into certain charts, and I'm just going to walk you guys through those. So, firstly, overall, from a consumer lifestyle perspective, things are definitely going to change, and I think we're all already aware of that. At a personal level, we've all made some decisions in terms of what will I do less after today. Uh, when will it be extremely essential for me to actually step out and do something? What are those places I will visit? What are those places I won't? So no surprises here, but this is just data in terms of how many people agree that they would say avoid public places or keep a distance in crowds, even if COVID pandemics, flattened out or it's come to a closing. A lot of people are also looking to change their daily lifestyle. So it also, is a little bit of an awakening for all of us, where we had all gotten so lost in the space of life, and especially in India, wherein there was very little time being devoted to, say, family, to exercise, to the most basic things that keep us happy and healthy in life. So a lot of people, you can see, resonate very strongly with that, because now after close to 2 months of being at home, they started to realize those things. And the idea really is that will people start to go out as often as they used to? And if they won't, then what do brands do to make sure that we're able to capitalize on those people even when they're at home? So let's look at some industry-wise data. So guys, as you can see, on the right-hand side are industries and sub-industries within them, where people are willing to put more money from the survey we did. So for example, if, as you can see, the dark green side is much higher in numbers, because let's take the first line, for example. 25% of the respondents believe that they're willing to pay more money for utilities over the next 6 months. Similarly, education's a very important aspect as well. So these sub-industries are really going to help you understand where the sweet spot is. Advertisers in these sub-industries may have an easier time because the demand of their product organically grows. So these advertisers are going to have, say, better efficiency and costs. They may not need to change a lot in terms of their strategy. And at Facebook, we're already seeing large advertisers across these segments really double down on their investments. And the reason they do that is because they know this is the right time to reach out to people. This is when people need us. Even if, say, certain of these industries cannot deliver now. Say, toys and games. So toys and games that you would typically order from an e-commerce website may not be able to deliver it to you today. But people know that because family is so important, because the kids at home are so important, that's going to be an important aspect for them going forward. So there are a lot of things where people are going to start pushing more money. However, on the flip side, there are the insecurities that people have. So let's look at this chart. Now here we see that there are certain industries and verticals where the user sentiment right now, and guys, this may change every week, but right now the user sentiment dictates that people are going to be slightly wary about how they engage with these industries. So let's say, for example, tobacco or smoking supplies. It's too much of a luxury in people's lives and they may not just want it anymore. Similarly, luxury brands and products. There's a little bit of uncertainty, hence there is insecurity about your own finances. So people may be wary about investing in, say, expensive goods, expensive houses, expensive cars. However, if the brands for those industries have to make sure that they were not selling to them online like they were yesterday. The strategies have to change now because you are going to establish a more reassuring way of going about things. So data suggests, from a sentiment perspective, these are the industries that could probably be impacted from a sentiment perspective. However, things will definitely roll back to normal, but it's only a matter of how long that will take. But your online advertising could probably reduce that dent. It's not, it wouldn't be fair to say that everything's great and everything's going to be fine if you just online advertise. But there are pivots in strategy that these brands will need to take. Uh, I'll give you a small example of business travel. So, all of the marketers on this call, everyone who's running a business on this call, before COVID, we would all just take a flight and go anywhere and just attend a meeting, even if it were not a critical meeting, it were not a quarterly or annual business review. You would still just jump on a flight because that client or that person is so important to you. However, after COVID, you would probably say that let's do it remotely and let's keep the more important meetings or the more important gatherings for in person. So certain things might start to change. So who gets impacted in that? Airline companies may be impacted, or travel companies, hotels, restaurants may be impacted. So then those are the kind of brands that kind of need to pivot their strategy towards why and when people can still, because it's going to really come down to consumers placing their trust in those brands. Speaking about non-essentials, this data basically shows what is the likelihood of that purchase still going through across certain categories. So let's say non-mobile electronics, someone was planning to buy a really state-of-the-art television set for their living room. About 21% of those people, as per the survey right now, have said that they may put that decision off permanently. But about half of the people surveyed said that we may probably buy a lesser priced television set or any electronic item which is non-mobile. So you know that there are changes coming from a sentiment perspective, and I think that's what brands need to really gauge in terms of where the sentiment is going, and then take a decision as to what their communication strategy should be, who should they be reaching out to, how they should be reaching out to them, and at what frequency. So these are some levers that Facebook's tried to put together with BCG. Some other data points that we got from this. Now, there are these segments which show us mixed results. There's a bunch of people who may want to spend more on these, while at the same time, there's a lot of people who want to cut back on these. So, from an overall perspective, these brands or these segments at a stage from a response perspective on digital. However, things are likely to change because I think with each passing month, our Maslow's hierarchy also changes. And just from personal experience, I can tell you that I think what may have been more important to me in the first month of lockdown seems less important to me right now. So data is always going to be on the move and things will dynamically change. But the idea we're trying to bring together with all of this data is don't think about the current ecosystem. Think about your short term, your long term, and say your medium term goals and how you can really pivot about those. Because right now, if your business is on pause, it's on pause. And it's a voluntary pause that we've all taken. The governments have enforced this voluntarily. So it's not as though it was an unplanned pause. Like, say, think about the 2008 recession. That was unplanned. So to get back from it also takes a lot longer. But when the whole pause to the economy and society is voluntary, as soon as we open up the restrictions, things can jump back immediately. So a little bit of optimism from that perspective. When we look at cuts of consumer groups, when we look at it from an age perspective or an income group or city perspective, overall, I think the data speaks in terms of what our general assumptions may have been. So higher propensity groups or higher income groups may not decrease spending as much as lower income groups will. And that's a little bit of an obvious fact. But if you look at a metro and non-metro, I would say it's a pretty even split. So the sentiment remains the same whether people are in a metro or not. While at the same time, there is a little more difference when it comes to age groups. So surprisingly, it's a younger generation of 18 to 25 that believe that they will need to decrease their spends in the next 6 months. Whereas the folks above 26 all the way up to 45 that we surveyed have shown lesser requests to believe in that compared to the younger generation. So definitely a much more responsible younger generation that we're seeing in India today.
I think just to add to that, we were recently talking in one of our previous webinars, very same line that it's going to be very important to demograph your audience now, because
Yeah,
it is we have very set parameters through which we used to judge that this is a possibility, or this is a probable audience, or this is the probable target audience that I have. But now
yeah,
suddenly post COVID, there is a new dimension of demography where social awareness, hygiene awareness, factors that matter to people, to the age group, maybe the decisions that you wouldn't take otherwise now have an impact. Or a certain age group like 18 to 20 have matured way more than anybody else. Maybe 9, 10 years of my daughter asks me the question that when are we going to go out, and when we go out, can you do this? So the whole perspective of every age generation has changed, and that has a larger impact. In a month's time, a 10-year-old or a 9-year-old kid has been tech savvy enough to attend classes, to respond to things. So there's a whole forced behavior shift that is going to that has taken place, and that is also mean that for brands and advertisers, the understanding of demography is going to be very important. It's not going to be traditional, it's not going to be assumed before COVID kind of a thing. So what do you think about that, Siddharth?
absolutely agree there. And I think the best way to understand a demography for a brand, again, is online tools. Because the kind of scale and reach that platforms like Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, Twitter, social media platforms, news platforms, the kind of scale they give you and reach they give you is uncomparable. And now that you know that most consumers will be indoors more, or most consumers will be more homebound, you need to be able to leverage these platforms to try and understand who's your audience. So when you run campaigns, the focus is not going to only be ROI, and sales. It's also going to be in terms of understanding your audience, building your customer, building a new customer persona for yourselves, and making sure that you're able to really tap into these new demographies that you discover for your brand. Because even if everyone puts on their own, looks at it from their own perspective, there are brands that we have engaged with in the last 1 or 2 months that we probably wouldn't have before COVID. So new demographies opening up, new audiences opening up, and online is really the only way to capitalize on that across platforms. So completely agree with you there. And like we've been saying throughout, right? It's the new world order. So things will definitely change. And with that, your demographies also are likely to tilt. And also the demography of the country also is changing. I think we have more youth generations now compared to senior demographies. So I think that also plays a very large aspect. So brands really need to go back into that research phase and work with specialists like yourself to be able to understand who is my consumer. And then you have so many tools available, like you can run surveys on Facebook through your branding campaigns. You can run surveys across platforms like Google, and you can really try to understand who's responding, who's got highest purchase intent, and then those are the folks you really need to go after when you're trying to sell your business.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, like we were just talking about, I think the only logical next step for the world for businesses is to move online. Now, India has already seen 2 or 3 large phases of online migration. With the advent of Geo, we saw a lot of people come online with the access of mobile and networks in tier 2, tier 3 cities. When demonetization happened, we saw online payments becoming well adopted. So I think this is one situation where e-commerce is really going to pick up because of the situation. Because again, you will want to focus your energies on a product that's available online. If it's available online, I may not go out to the store and buy it anymore. So be it clothes or be it, I don't know if you all saw the recent news around Mercedes Benz selling, taking orders online. So those are small examples of how brands are really evolving and trying to make sure that they're building their e-commerce shops, they're moving their marketing online. Outdoor radio, television is going to remain relevant, but outdoor and radio not as relevant as earlier. So you need to make sure that you're able to account for all of that. And if your business currently doesn't have a online shop, so it's a good time to start thinking about it. So as you can see, typically from the question that we asked people here, how do you expect your online spend for the following types of products? So across categories, people are willing to push money online. Even for categories towards the lower end of the bars, which were typically offline. So vitamins and supplements, again, very emerging category in India. People would like to go to the specialist store and ask a few questions and then make purchases. But now they're more comfortable buying online. First aid, home appliances. There's a lot of people, including myself, who would love to walk into a Reliance Digital or Vijay Sales or any home appliance store and get a look and touch and feel of all the products out there and then make my decision. But then again, I feel like I too will now focus on just purchasing it online if it's available. So good time to set up online shops. The tools and resources are available. It's cheaper than ever now to set up an online shop, build a great e-commerce website, do great digital marketing. Having an online shop helps you attribute for your media spends also more effectively. So overall, the shift is definitely, it was always in the making, but I think the current situation has given it a really aggressive push. So just recapping some of the things we saw, highlights from the consumer sentiments that we're seeing, it's definitely going to be long term. Essentials, OTT, savings related, fintech apps, health and wellness, online education are definitely going to be a very focus area for consumers, and especially brands in these spaces, in FMCG also, that's not written on the screen. Brands in this space have to really double down on their digital right now. Categories that are going to have a tougher time, but will definitely need to keep the lights on as far as marketing is concerned, because they're going to have a tough time. Travel, out of home, discretionary spends, really expensive purchases, for example, and home automation, cars, houses. These are where people are slightly skeptical, or I would say it's just the uncertainty that someone may say, let me hold off for a while and see how the market resumes itself, and then I may take a decision on it. But while they hold off and while they wait for markets to pick up and they wait for green signals in the stock market, they wait for green signals from the government, you need to keep that person engaged. And your brand needs to do its bit for community, for that user who's already given you so much till today, which helped you become a brand. From a more demographic perspective, we've seen that higher income groups are showing that they're less likely to cut back on spends. We spoke in detail about the shift towards online spending, and net, I think you also mentioned at the start, Khushbu, that time spent on smartphone has increased by about 3 hours a week. That's the latest data we have. So this is per user, and 3 hours is a significant amount of time per week. So now, if we have every user for 3 extra hours on their social, how do we really leverage? And how do we still not seem opportunistic about it? So before I jump into how brands could potentially respond, Khushbu, any thoughts from you on the overall consumer perspective?
No, it is pretty much, very much in line with what we have been experiencing ourselves. Only challenge that we face it, or the gap that comes in between is, there is a brand um, which is having a suddenly a huge pool of possible consumers available to it, but
Okay.
has no means to reach out. So,
Okay.
every category, like whether you look at simple food supplements to, something as heavy as Mercedes or real estate or anything, they have now customers. But are they internalized, or do they have enough mechanism to be able to complete the sale, even if there is a sale, if reach out, if connect? So that's a missing piece that every brand has to figure out for themselves, that what is the journey that I'm giving to consumer, because digital marketing is just the means to reach out,
Yeah.
which has become suddenly accessible, over access, cheaper, accurate maybe. But once you reach out, what is the process, what is the experience, how you make still the journey of converting that person to your consumer is going to be a new challenge that every brand will have to kind of work and realign to.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's going to be everyone's going to have to put their thinking caps on. I'll be honest, and things are going to change. And like I was mentioning earlier, your communication is what it all's going to come down to. And you rightly said the consumer experience that we create after they see the ad, how is that going to play along? So always important to remember that the consumer buyer journey is never linear. It's not like they see an ad and they click on your website and they fill out your form and they make a purchase. It's never that straightforward. It's actually extremely non-linear and complex. It goes in circles and circles and undefined shapes, and then finally there's a purchase. So at a time like this, what you guys need to really do as a brand and try and simplify that customer life cycle easily, because you know that even if you're showing the advertisement today and your purchase is happening say 4 months later, let's take an example of auto, for example. So if it's a car brand and I want to show ads today, but I know that he can't come for a test drive, he or she cannot even come to the showroom and see all my models together. But you know that this event, like a test drive, for example, is something that can be only done say once the lockdown is definitely over. So you plan for that event in a further part of your purchase journey. Similarly, what do you do from now till then? That's what you do online. So even those communications you plan sequentially. And I think that's where the sweet spot will come in, really, where you're able to plan for your consumer lifecycle journey and increase that turnaround time that you had on your purchase. So let's look at a few ways in which brands can actually do that. So I'll take three lenses here. One is short term, one is near term, which is when consumers are ready to buy again, when they're ready to purchase again. And then, of course, there's a long term impact of this that all brands will see, whether negative or positive. So, from a short term perspective, it's really what brands are doing now. If a company offers salary cuts, or if a company goes out of business, or if a company reduces production, it's in the news. And more often than not, these situations are out of the company's control. They have to do it for survival. But then how are you making sure that your communication around it is such that you're not being offensive, you're not being indifferent to the community, to the people that you have internally or your customers externally? So first and foremost, try to build trust with your consumers. You want to ensure that you're giving them a very safe and secure journey. You're giving them validation that if we are a brand, let's say you're a brand that's currently in business, let's take a food delivery app. Food delivery apps are in business. Most cities are allowing delivery of food via online apps. So what can a food delivery app do to make sure that it's in control and show people that, hey, we know there's a pandemic going on, we know there are sanitization issues, but what are we doing is, hey, we're taking a temperature check of the person who made your food and it shows on your invoice. So simple examples, extremely effective and trustworthy. I've seen my friends share it on social media because they found it extremely touching, and the fact that that's the level of transparency they're going into in spite of the scale of the business they have. So every time I make an order from Swiggy, the invoice shows me what is the body temperature of the person who made my food. And that's fantastic because that gives me reassurance that Swiggy is really going all the way in terms of ensuring that my product is sanitized. So make sure you're able to do that. That's one example that comes to my head. Maybe Khushbu, do you have anything that you've done with brands or you're planning for brands, if you can actually disclose it?
So, very interesting thing that I was telling in the previous webinar also. It is also about the purpose. Not every brand can find and align and do what Swiggy is doing. Uh,
Yeah.
that is where the interesting part comes in. So, like for one of our client who is into spices, what
Mhm.
we're trying to do is typically as I believe the localization is going to be very key.
Yeah.
Suddenly the globalization is an abuse word, and we would want home produce, we would want from my own market and my own farm and things like that. So this is a season for spices. Usually the lot of businesses are going to be taking and picking up spices and all. Suddenly this has happened. So how can we help a traditional business who's been selling spices on annual level at this certain month for certain time? So you have the whole network, and whole groups and channels, and kind of creating a micro digital channels for them to have their sales identified at a local level. So this is one of the small example on promptly how
Yeah.
can we quickly get a web forms to get the orders from the typical buyers that we have, and channelize the whole local delivery and deliver with the whatever hygiene and all that we have. So this is one example. Another client of ours quickly realigned with AMC, and all the fleet management that they had for their bike shares have been rerouted to kind of help AMC deliver vegetables on a very first day. So right now we don't sell or we don't talk about the product, but the vehicle has branding, and that branding, when it goes from city to city, society to society, it takes the brand with it, and the brand has like around 20-30,000 users over the SMS are told that if you want vegetables, just give us a call for my bike and you will get a vegetable at your society. So it's a very prompt action at a local level, where more so sustenance and brand relevance is kept in mind while realigning what we can do. But it is going to be a very interesting journey for every category of brands. So you gave an example of Mercedes, and fortunately, one of the dealers that we briefly work with here in local market, and we've been working and discussing that what is it that's going to happen, because can people are not going to go get up and buy Mercedes. So how are we to still stay relevant? And these are the questions that will require brands to brainstorm, talk, discuss. We're working with very interesting brand locally, where it's about they are automating B2 in B2C a mobile repair services. So something as still not organized as an industry. They're trying to get into a startup phase, and we've noticed that lockdown has caused a lot of mobile failures. Like the time that you have spent more on mobile is going to cause the performance issue, and how are you going to? So it's not open, but we are working on getting them ready when it opens. How are they going to communicate? How are they going to do? So for every brand, whether you talk about spices to whether you talk about some simple B2B service model, or something like a bike share, everyone has their different journey where they have to align differently. All of them right now, one thing working is how are they going to be hygienic and still safe to use post COVID. And that's a one part where everybody is drawing that line, and whoever innovates and whoever does the on top of a right communication there is going to have a lot of relevance and a lot of attention from the consumers, because that's going to be the
Right.
key post this.
Absolutely agree with you. Like you said, it's become basic hygiene to speak about sanitization, and it's really what brands are able to innovate, because there's no lack of creativity. There's no lack of partners like you who can actually bring great ideas to the table. So it's just that the way we look at ideas now changes a little bit, and it's more about being a little responsible as well as a brand. And I think some of the examples you quoted are what's our insight number two today, which is you're able to act responsibly, like the AMC example. They're doing a bit for the community while their trucks are moving around. And those are the kind of moves that brands will really need to do to ensure that they're looked at, when all of this is over in hindsight, they're looked at as a brand that made a difference. And they didn't just hold off on, parking their whole fleet of vehicles. Or the rideshare app could have just parked the ride shares and saved on the fuel, and there's anyway no income coming from people renting the rides, but they still used it to deliver vegetables. So small changes, even in sometimes your business model temporarily, can really help in how people start perceiving you and what your positioning is in the market. So in line with what we're speaking about, like, I think there's a communication, like we've spoken about this enough, but it's extremely important that you're able to set the right expectation. Communication should not be confused with a bombardment of information. Do it at the right frequency, at the right intervals. Make sure that the communication is authentic. Even if your brand is in trouble and you may need to speak about, say, a small surcharge you're applying on a service or a product, you can just honestly tell your consumers because you can expect them to understand. Similarly, uh, your customer service teams have to be empathetic at this point. As much as we celebrate them as heroes for actually being available and working from home with limited resources, limited technology and infrastructure, they need to be extremely empathetic while they deal with customers and external inquiries, because that's, again, it's everyone's in a little bit of a psychologically uncertain space right now. So making sure that everyone's treated with some compassion is very important, and try to implement feedback. A quick example I can give you from the Delhi area NCR area where I live is a brand called Milk Basket. So they do grocery deliveries for you every day before 7 a.m. That was their model before COVID. And as soon as COVID hit, they first were working with the governments here in Haryana, Delhi, UP government for Noida, in terms of getting the right permissions for their fleets to be active. So they would keep informing me as a consumer in terms of where that discussion is, by when do they expect to start deliveries. So they've really done a fantastic job in terms of being authentic and keeping the customer informed. Similarly, they had to levy a surcharge of 3 rupees per parcel or delivery so that they can cover for the cost of sanitization, making sure that all the delivery boys and all the whole supply chain for milk, for groceries, for vegetables that come from the farm, the whole supply chain is sanitized, and Milk Basket has to pick up the cost of that. So they pushed that cost onto customers and they made it optional. And I think any responsible customer will try to help them out as much as they can, because I think as much as technologies make lives easier for us, this is a point in time where we have a chance to give back. So being empathetic, staying in touch with your customers, and you have a lot of ways to do this. You don't need to rely only on SMS blast. You can use WhatsApp API. You can use instant messenger chatbots. So there's a lot of ways to do this at scale, and you can actually be in touch with a much larger audience than just the numbers you have. So try to explore those, and so on the same lines, demonstrate care. Make sure when COVID broke out, there was a surge of brands that all made some fantastic creatives about staying at home. So that's where the real play comes in terms of they didn't go dark. They didn't stop advertising completely. They did content that was more relevant and what people needed to see at the time. So that's really where a brand comes in. And you can probably imagine now that if you're going to stay live as an advertiser or a marketer, you cannot run only performance campaigns anymore. I think we've passed that boat where, in any case, running performance campaign marketings only in itself were not the most optimal for your cost. But very often, and this is me and Kushbu will also agree, that brand marketers don't agree to that, because they'll be like, yeah, I hear you, but I don't want to do brand, maybe later. It's like how we would speak to a customer care person who called us. So they would only do performance, and now someone quoted that it's like that small child in school who was a bully, and now he has no friends to play with. So try to integrate the entire funnel when it comes to, because it's the best time to do it. If that later isn't now for branding, then when is it? Because right now you can't really deliver on performance because of logistical issues. So deliver on the upper parts of the funnel, and you'll see a lot of growth when you actually are able to do your performance. Eventually you'll see the combined payoff there. um, Make
Yeah,
sure you're able to.
that's where the patience part comes into the
Yeah,
picture.
yeah, I think
As
that's.
agency, we keep pushing and keep holding a client, saying that
Yeah.
get your performance. Let us work on the brand because that's equally important right now.
And I think now we've come to a point where there are so many tools, for example, that, I mean, you can use the Facebook conversion lift tool and just try to understand whether this campaign caused a lift in my number of conversions or was it just organic. So if tools are available, use it is what I would definitely recommend. And you can trust technology and you can trust data. So don't go by intuition and just trust the algorithms and the systems. Building trust, we've been speaking about this, and I think this is most important for your brands right now. Making sure people are positive all the time. So let your comms let people know that you're not alone. Let people know that things will be over soon and things will get back soon. I don't know if you guys saw the Twitter series between all the different Indian airlines. I think that's one of the best examples of this, where they were all supportive and united, and everyone, right from GoAir, SpiceJet, Indigo, all of them tweeted, and then even the airport authorities of India tweeted on it. And I think it was really fun to see brands come together like that, and Twitter is a great medium for them to do that. And we spoke about assistance, like the milk basket example, give support to people, give them alternatives if they don't have support. With brands changing their business model, with a lot of e-commerce players now only selling essentials, which they never sold before, make sure your customers are aware of that. Similarly, use digital platforms to drive action. So emailers have lower open rates, SMS blasts have redundant data. So try to use digital platforms that are bidding based, like a Facebook or an Instagram or a Google, where you're able to actually reach real time audiences and bring the experiences. There are such cool innovations and tools like WhatsApp API, like chatbots that I spoke about, like augmented reality ads. And all of this is available and it's open to advertisers in India. So even for those, if you want to know more and understand more, Kushbu and her team are best placed to help you with that, because that's what we do at Facebook. We're trying to enable them so they can enable you. So make sure you're able to build in new mixes into your traditional marketing channels, even if you were online on digital marketing. Try to experiment with new things, because now's the best time to do it, to test and learn. And then you really know when to double down when things get better.
Yeah.
And content's going to play an important part. We've spoken about this enough, so I'll quickly skim through this. Brands are here; they know what they want to talk about. So this is, for example, an example of a chatbot. So on the right hand side, and then the kind of comms that this flowers and petals manufacturer has created is, we are here to answer all your queries. Travel we spoke about is going to be most impacted, but they're being innovative and they're asking people to book their travel in advance for future, like say 4 months down the line or 6 months down the line. So they're cognizant that people will not travel immediately. Similarly, you see a lot of Indian airlines slashing prices for bookings you do 6 months later. So try to be innovative, try to, you know, leverage what the consumer wants. For example, an Indian airline is now offering that you can book flights for really cheap 6 months later, and even if the situation doesn't improve then, worst come worst scenario, we'll let you extend it for another 6 months. So, you know, think about offers where you can at least keep your liquidity going and you can keep taking orders even if you can't execute them, and then build on a great supply chain internally so that you're able to execute them when the time comes. From a recovery perspective, I think, like I was just mentioning, you need to make sure that your business is prepared for when the surge actually opens, when the pandemic comes to a close. From a digital advertising and marketing perspective, you can enable a lot of CRMs right now, enable data, make sure you're able to get reporting on the campaigns you're doing, and try to study more as marketers and understand those reports, because now's the best time to do that. And look at how you can play with other players in your space and build joint initiatives, do some NGO work, community work. So there's a lot that you really need to also introspect. And I will not tell you how to run your business, but there's a lot that you can do to introspect at this time. And I'm sure most of you are already doing that. So those are again important aspects where you make sure that you're creating the right channels of sales for when the pandemic ends, and you're able to really tap into those customers immediately.
I think that's really insightful, Siddharth. It's like, something that there are dots here, and you're like kind of putting it together with a lot of data,
Yeah.
valid, a lot of insights, and that's what we really kind of look forward to. Yes, we've been getting a lot of interesting insights. We've been getting, as a partner, a lot of training, and we're looking forward. We're also this time to learn as much as we can. We've been kind of creating
Yeah.
plans, and we are running certain campaigns where we are seeing a lot of traction coming in. The cost of leads on performance parts, yes, unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of branding budgets right now. But on the performance part, yes, there is a lot of things that are moving, and um, the funnel part, what you said is very right, but apart from that, there's a balance of performance versus content. That's where we are kind of enjoying that, how well can we
Yeah.
create a content that still engages the person, irrespective of whatever the situation is. And in that, I'm just going to pick up few questions that have come on a chat here, and ask you, and we can take one by one, however.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
Very well.
someone,
Yeah, I think thanks.
sorry.
Yeah, no, I was saying thanks for the feedback on the session. I'm happy that you found it insightful. And I've actually had a look at most of the campaigns that your team is running. And I'll be honest when I say that they're doing a fantastic job. Like you mentioned correctly, it's more, I think what your unique strength is as an agency is when you're able to get the right creatives and then drive performance through them. And you understand that. Typically, a lot of performance agencies I work with, I have to focus a lot on getting them to build the right creatives, but that's something you guys are already doing really well. So great foundation there already, and I think now is a time where you may actually see some brand money unlock
Yeah.
from the
So
advertisers
once
there.
the lockdown and once the movement starts coming in, I think the confidence, because right now what happens is, even if you get orders, or if you get delivery, the delivery is not working. Or like today, just like half an hour back, India has released a zonal chart for 100 and few cities which are still in red. So there are a lot of things that are changing. But I think May onwards, we are seeing a lot of brands opening and getting some liberty on part.
Yeah,
We've been talking to a lot of corporates who are looking to use social media and digital marketing as a channel to connect with their employees and distributor. Forget about sales, because for them that's more important. So there are a lot of dynamics that we are, or variety that we are also getting to work on. So that's the beauty of it. And like you said, we always believed, as a digital agency, I love Varun from Glitch, in one
yeah,
podcast he had mentioned, and I cling on to it unknowingly. When I started, this was the thought process that digital is no longer a separate thing. You cannot
yes,
isolate it as a division. You cannot call it as performance only. It is very much a part of a strategy. It is very much a part of your core fundamental as marketing.
absolutely.
Integration, and COVID has proved that not less, any lesser it with intensity. You can't say I will run ads and I will deliver it somewhere else, or it's all integrated right now. It's very much a part of the whole thing. Yeah, coming back to the questions part of it, Jayant has asked, I know Jayant, and he runs a wellness center. So many platforms, and Facebook losing shine against the other platforms like Google ads and Instagram. Okay, I think he didn't realize that Instagram is still Facebook.
I'll take this question. I think Jayant, when we look at platforms separately, we look at it from a personal consumer perspective. But I think what's really important is there are two types of people who use a platform. One is consumers like you and I, and then there are advertisers, which may be your business, your wellness business, for example. So it's really your business's decision in terms of trying to identify which channel works best for you. Shine is again a very subjective and personal opinion about each platform. Like I may prefer Instagram to a Facebook, and Kushbu may prefer a LinkedIn to a Google. So again, that's very subjective, but I think it's all platforms serve a different purpose, and what's more important is what you're able to receive from it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think moving on to um, Pradeep, daily habits, and take take a big change, Pradeep? Yes, it's already taking change, and I would like to share. Pradeep is a very nice entrepreneur, small client that we work with, very passionate, someone who has changed a traditional business in from wholesale to retail, and now retail to online in post-COVID in a very swift manner. So these are the very nice, right examples that we see that on ground how swiftly one has been able to kind of make a shift and be find relevance in it. Um, so one other question is, Siddharth, thank you for the insights. Do you believe that global e-commerce or at least Indian e-commerce will change after this? If yes, how will it affect, especially after Geo and FB partnership? I think this should be your favorite question, and you can share
Uh,
about Geo and Facebook, how it has come to be, how the whole thing happened, and what is happening on that front.
Sure, sure. So one is there's two parts to your question, Manan. One is will the e-commerce ecosystem change India and globally? Definitely. There'll be a lot more pressure on the e-commerce system once the logistical lockdown restrictions end. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Even as a consumer yourself, Manan, I'm sure that you will start purchasing a lot of things online which you may not have previously. Well, I know that our generation buys a lot online, but it's really going to move one level up. So e-commerce is going to grow across segments, across even traditionally offline segments like FMCG. I will not even go to I mean, I would prefer to buy online what's available online, like we discussed earlier. So definitely change and change for the better. It will also change from a logistics perspective where they may build in more automation. They may build in, certain systems in place where delivery is more seamless and contactless. So again, from a logistics perspective, it's important to see what the e-commerce companies come up with. There's already a lot of like innovations. Like for example, you may have seen societies where they have a Dropbox for e-commerce parcels, and then you get a SMS code, and then you just go put your code onto the Dropbox, and you can just take your parcel. So this way, you don't need to have one delivery boy going to every doorstep to deliver. So limiting people's movement while at the same time scaling e-commerce will definitely happen. And I sense a lot of automation in warehousing. If that answers your question. Now to the more interesting part of your question, how will that change after Geo and FB partnership? So I think on the partnership, from what I'm allowed to actually speak about it, firstly, I would encourage you to look at it as an investment. You may have seen that the $5.7 billion investment is a minority shareholder that Facebook has purchased. And it's not something that was decided overnight. This is something that was in the coming for years. Our entire India and global leadership team has been monitoring that deal very closely, and finally we were able to roll it out. I think from a shopping perspective, currently there are areas of synergy that the two companies are working on where they can start exploring what to do together. There is a little bit of there's a team, there's like a rapid action team that's been set up to understand and create the roadmap for the company, and how can we leverage Geo's penetration in market, how can they leverage our technological strengths. So these two companies are definitely looking at what we can do together, but for now it's just a minority stake investment. And it's just like how you or I would invest in the stock market, or mergers and acquisitions happen between companies. But this is not a merger and acquisition. This is not a complete buyout of any kind. Like WhatsApp was completely purchased by Facebook. So this is a minority stake investment, and I think both the companies have aligned visions in terms of being able to bring the entire country online and then give them a great experience online. So those are the vision pillars, and bringing people online and giving them a great experience.
That's nice. So I think we talked about it before. So the next question is very interesting from Chandradeep. Chandradeep works with a brand called Symphony,
All
uh,
right.
our own cooler brand, and he has a question that how WhatsApp business can be helpful in connecting with customers for consumer durable brand, and our WhatsApp business API and business APIs are or I don't know what the question means.
Yeah, no, I got it. I got it.
Or what?
I can. Yeah. So, great question, Chandradeep. Like Kushbu said, I'll take the second part of your question first. they serve the same purpose, but there are two different ways to serve the same purpose: the API and the app. If you have a smaller business with lesser customers, I recommend you use the WhatsApp app, business app. If you have a larger business with a high roster of customers and a high volume of purchases, then you use the API, because the API is a great bridge between your data, your CRM, and WhatsApp. And it's when data is at scale, you need automation to be able to facilitate the movement of it. So an API is definitely the way to go when you have a large customer base. Now, how can you use it? And it definitely can be extremely useful. First and foremost, extremely important to remember that WhatsApp is not a promotional tool. WhatsApp for business cannot be used for advertising, promoting, upselling, cross-selling your products. So important to keep that in mind. WhatsApp is a tool that we're trying to push towards social commerce. So it's a transactional tool. It's a commerce tool. So from a transactional tool, here's what I mean. Let's say 1,000 air coolers were bought over 6 months in a certain district, and now you have that data of 1,000 customers from there. And let's say a total of 1 lakh air coolers were bought in a particular month in Gujarat, in any particular month. So now you have that data. Now, what you can do with WhatsApp API is you can reach out to those people. You can send them their invoice over WhatsApp for Business with a PDF or anything in rich format. You could also potentially talk to them about when their servicing is due. You can talk to them about best practices to keep their cooler in good shape. So you can give them information related to the purchase itself. But you cannot tell them, here's our new model, please consider buying this. Or we have a buyback offer going on. You cannot do that. So that's basically how you can leverage WhatsApp for business. Keeping in touch with your customers is definitely way more effective than SMS. We're all so glued into WhatsApp, and I think this country runs on WhatsApp as a communication channel. So people always will see what's there on WhatsApp. So hence, extremely great tool for products and services. Is one thing to remember. Make sure your volume of transactions is large. So Symphony is a great use case, but for smaller businesses on the call, make sure that you're only investing into this or you're only venturing into this if you have a large customer base or a large volume of transactions.
Yeah, that's very insightful. WhatsApp has always been a Pandora's box that we also keep getting.
Yeah.
And how can we do it and what we can do it. And we are kind of exploring that, how locally we can kind of maximize the use of it. There's a question from Pradeep on a personal message. This is next one. Will this pandemic have a very strong positive impact on modern trade sectors like DMart, Nature's Basket, Food Hall, Grofers, etc.? In terms of scale, can you ask this? I think I'll just take this, Pradeep. Yes, it's like in a conclusion, self-concluded that these are the things that are going to see a lot of change. Something very simple where our mothers used to spend a lot of time going out and do this as an activity to pick groceries, pick stuff. Suddenly, our habits have changed. Now the men go out with the gears and mask and everything, and still the same kind of a cross. So there's a whole habit change has happened, and that's going to, I think, very much continue as a habit, because अभी होता था तो अब तो जाता था ना, अब क्यों जाना है? So that is going to keep coming back. And also there is an amount of fear, there is amount of security, there's amount of hygiene that's going to play a role. So I think all of the essential category people, how well they can locally capture the market, how well they have hygiene integrated in their delivery, how well they are giving the right value proposition to your customers are going to win the battle. And go local, go small. I keep saying that it's the time to actually reverse the whole cycle, and capture where you are and do well where you can, and that's the way to start about it. So I'll move on to the next question. If we have small scale clients who want to generate business in shorter period, what will be your suggestion? People are visiting stores for physical experience of home appliancing and buying from online. So I think more so question is from the point of view is mom pop retails or e-commerces who are looking to do. What would be your strategy, Siddharth? What would you like to share with them?
So I think build a stronger proposition for your store. If they're going online and buying at a large e-commerce website, say Amazon or Flipkart, for example, if they're doing that, then I think there's two ways you can look at this. One is from a business modeling perspective itself, where you start aggregating products onto those platforms as well, so that you're able to increase your volume of orders. Second is also you look at how you can possibly maybe build a store of your own, or for example you build that communication through your social channels, through your digital channels, and you ensure that you're able to build trust in people. That quick example, like maybe the after sale advice that you could give them in person is something that an online outfit can never do. So there are definitely a lot of reasons, and I take your feedback, and I've seen this phenomenon a lot where people go and check out products, say electronics, at a store locally, and then they go and buy the same model number online because typically it's available for cheaper because of the economies of scale they operate at. But I think for you, what you really need to do is bank on trust and relationship, build your own digital channels to be able to speak that language, and focus on the customer. And this is an issue that you've had even before COVID as retailers. And we're all aware of that. But I think just focusing on your customers is what the winning businesses have been doing. Just build that empathy and trust through your social channels. Make sure you're aware, make sure you're marketing for yourself so people know that. And once they walk into your store, I'm sure your staff is good enough to ensure that they don't, move back online. So try to do whatever you can do for them apart from pricing as well. Like add that extra layer of customer service if you have to. That could probably help you overcome this.
Yeah, I think, hope, Joy, that answers your question. Um, this is interesting. We have a lot of clients who are into real estate, and
Yeah,
what do you
yeah.
expect?
Give me this question.
Yeah, you follow our business managers. That.
So spend trends. I mean, of course, currently spend trends have dropped from a consumer purchase perspective because people cannot do site visits and people cannot do bookings. But then again, I see the real estate sector picking up quickly again. They've pivoted very fast. They've come back online. They're starting to advertise. And what they're starting to do is they're creating virtual experiences. They're looking at online tools where they can do maybe a 3D walk of the property. They're doing every possible thing that technology can allow for them to bring the experience online and stay on top of the consumer's mind that the day he gets to actually do a site visit, he will come here first. So that's the pivot that real estate brands have taken at this point in time. I think from a purchase perspective, I don't know how the economy will pan out, and I'm not the best person to comment on that. But you can definitely keep your users engaged. Like a small example again, Delhi NCR, I received a call from EMAR today, and my first response was that there's really no point in me coming having this conversation because I can't see your property. But they built out a really great 3D modeled walkthrough for the property. They're promoting it online. They've integrated it into their website. They're giving you more information on the website. They've increased the touch points that people can have with your brand. So that's a little bit of a pivot you also will need to take as offline real estate players. Typically, what we did before COVID was we have real estate, we have all the channels of promotion, airport, outdoor, and some money on Facebook. Now you need to focus on digital as a larger part of that mandate because limited people outside is limited eyeballs on your advertisement or outdoor. So you need to make sure that you're pivoting to digital as far as your marketing spends are concerned. You're being really creative because a lot of real estate players are on digital right now. So be creative, and I think there's some fantastic ads across cities from real estate. And I think even Zero Gravity's forte has primarily been real estate. So they could definitely
That
give
is a
you.
very interesting insight we've seen running few real estate campaigns is in general we've seen clients getting bookings, which is very surprising. First, when I heard, I was myself very surprised, and they said that they were positive. They wanted to have a house, and it was on coming. It's not like an sudden spurge thought of it. And this is what we are talking about, people who are buying houses, after a lot of consideration. It's not an overnight decision. It's not something that you got up and you want it, and something. you screening it, and the time that people got at home sitting together with family, got them
Yeah,
to think, discuss, talk, weigh the options,
absolutely.
consider it nicely. So there is a part where you have to say that, that there's a survival, there is fight, there is a struggle, but then there are a lot of decisions being taken together as a family, and
Correct.
that has got a good amount of even medical health care, preventive care, where people are like, I've been telling my clients, few of them, that just think from a psyche point of view, that you might have not spent so much time with your whole family ever. Even in the
Absolutely.
vacations we would not do as much as we're doing right now, and that's forcing us to look at the choices we make, or look at the way our behavior patterns are, buying patterns are. And real estate, being a very wise sound decision, takes a very front load, in terms of, if you were considering buying a house, then right now you would be talking, discussing, maybe you take the decision later, process it later, but you will make up a lot of your mind. And I think that's part what you mentioned is, there is a lot of work that's where it needs to be done, that how you bring the journey to the end point, how
Yeah.
you bring the experience, do you have walkthroughs, do you have right people to talk and explain, do you have enough case studies to explain, are you engaging enough, or you not feeling or making them frustrated? So a lot of insights. What we've done is, a few of the campaigns, that performance we ran, we kind of go back and ask the CRM team, or ask the customer team of the client, and say, give us the transcript, or tell us what has been coming in. That
Yeah.
helps us to kind of filter the whole process of selecting the audience to understanding the campaign behavior. So I think that is a very interesting
Oh,
segment.
good. Good to see optimism. Actually, I'm hearing this from other agencies as well. Real estate is actually seeing a lot of interest, and I think, like you said, Khushbu, it's because families are together. There's more time to discuss, and it's an important decision. So they're finally getting the time to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, just answering one of the question of Kennel. Kennel, we can't share the presentation. I'm so sorry. It's a Facebook proprietary thing, and we are just grateful that Siddharth here has been able to talk to us, because as a partner, that's a luxury and a leverage that he's given us. But we can't share the presentation. I'm so sorry. I hope you got the gist of a lot of things that we talked about. It's a lot more important to kind of grasp the idea rather than cling on to the numbers, because they are very fluid. They're going to change every week, every month. Right, Siddharth? You can correct that.
Absolutely. That's I think the major reason, Kenil. We could have given you the data, but as of tomorrow, things can change, and that's why we want to make sure that we're not putting out stale information anywhere. But I think just keep with you the pillars we spoke about in terms of how brands can respond. I think that's most important. And Khushbu and the team are always there to give you any additional guidance.
Yeah. There's a one question from Alok. He's a very good friend, and he heads the marketing for one of a large hospital here. He has a very
Okay.
interesting
Yeah.
question. What should be the social media strategy for urban rural market with right TG? Like, I know Alok because he comes from an experience of running hospitals in a very non-tier one state cities. Now he's also running one of the leading hospital chains in Ahmedabad. So he, basically, just to expand on the question is that, do you see that within a state, within the local market, there is a strategy change between a city and a rural segment? Like, the way data is dissected, like I look at my city also now with the wards and area where what is happening, it's that fragmented. So where do you think that
Yeah, I think
the strategy stands on that?
definitely some differences in strategy when you're doing urban versus rural targeting. I think one very important aspect to keep in mind is the fact that online platforms give you the option to do vernacular targeting. So leverage that. There's multiple languages that you can run ads on Facebook, Instagram, wherever. So make sure that you're targeting the rural areas in vernacular language, and also the intensity of the communication has to be different. For example, rural areas, you want to go in with a much more simpler communication, catering to the issues that you foresee with them. Whereas in an urban area, it may not be a price sensitivity issue. It may be more of a technology upgrade issue. So in urban areas, you could speak about what appeals to them as consumers, like having the best state of the art technology, best doctors. And in a rural area, you could speak more about accessibility. You could speak more about the kind of illnesses, and you can play a more larger role in awareness also in rural areas, because in urban areas, again, there's more access to information and people are more aware and everyone's their own doctor nowadays. But in rural, there is still that fear in people in terms of what exactly is happening to me if something's not right. So you can play an awareness role, you can play a little bit of an educator's role. And hospital business, as you already know, and I'm sure you're putting this into perspective, is a business of trust. And people will come to your establishment if they feel that they can trust you with their own selves or lives or families. So that's why it's extremely important to make sure that you're not just putting out content about what services you provide, you're putting out content about general illnesses and how people can overcome it, by eating healthy, staying fit, stuff like that as well. I hope that answers your question, Alok.
Yeah, I think that covers the lot of questions that we
Yeah.
had in our coming from different people in it. And it was a very insightful session. Thank you, Siddharth. We're looking forward to a lot more of these till the physical limitations have been lifted and we are able to meet in person. So we will be coming back again with a lot of specific to the requirements are specific to topics and bring the same audience back. I would like to thank every one of you to join in, and thank you very much to make it very interactive, very spontaneous, and hope to see you all again. And thank you, Siddharth, once again. Thank you,
Thanks
everyone.
a lot for having me, the whole team at Zero Gravity. I hope everyone has a great weekend. Take care. Bye bye.
Yeah, thank you.